I used to think my husband was just bad at gifts, but now I think he just doesn't care. We've been married for 10 years. He's a brilliant engineer, the kind of guy who can solve complex problems in his sleep. But when it comes to romance, forget it. I've spent years dropping hints, making wish lists, even directly telling him what I want, and yet, every holiday, every birthday, every anniversary, he either forgets or gives me something completely absurd. One year, for our anniversary, I got a bulk pack of AA batteries. "You always need batteries," he said with a proud grin. Another time, a $5 gas station bouquet, still wrapped in plastic, tossed on the kitchen counter like an afterthought. The worst? My 30th birthday. I planned a fancy dinner, got all dressed up, and he didn't even show up. "Work emergency," he said. He didn't even text. Just left me sitting at a restaurant alone. So this year, I decided I was done. No more tears, no more disappointment, no more pretending I'm okay with it. For our anniversary, I booked myself a spa day with his credit card. For my birthday, a designer bag I'd been eyeing for years, also with his credit card. Valentine's Day, a weekend at a luxury resort, champagne, a massage, a room with an ocean view. I even signed the card he gave me, "To my beautiful wife with all my love." And you know what? It was perfect. I got exactly what I wanted, and he got to keep being the oblivious, emotionally unavailable man he's always been. But then, he found out. I thought he wouldn't even notice, but one day he was checking his statements and saw the charges. He confronted me, not angry, but confused. "Why didn't you just tell me you wanted these things?" he asked, genuinely baffled. That's when I snapped. "Tell you? I have told you, for years, and every time you forget or act like it doesn't matter. So fine, I took matters into my own hands. And guess what? It worked. For once, I actually felt special. I got to be happy without begging you to care." His face fell. He didn't get defensive. He didn't argue. He just looked hurt. Then he said something I wasn't expecting. "I thought you didn't like gifts." "Excuse me? You always seem so independent, like you don't need that stuff. You're always saying gifts aren't important, that you value actions over things." I thought I was showing my love by working hard, by making sure we have a good life. I didn't realize I was making you feel invisible. I had no words. For years, I thought he just didn't care, but now I had to wonder, was he really just that clueless? Had I somehow given off the impression that I didn't want to be spoiled, that I didn't want romance? He sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "I don't want you to have to buy your own happiness. Let me try, please." For the first time in years, I felt hope. I gave him one last shot. And guess what? He nailed it. For our next anniversary, he planned an entire surprise trip to Paris. He bought me a necklace I mentioned once in passing months ago. He finally understood. And to think, it all started because I decided to buy my own damn gifts. Maybe some men just need a wake-up call.
When my wife gave birth to our son, everything changed. And I don't mean in the usual new parents adjusting way. I mean she became a completely different person. At first, I chalked it up to exhaustion. She was recovering, breastfeeding, and adjusting to the overwhelming role of motherhood. I told myself to be patient, but weeks turned into months, and her attitude toward me only got colder. She kicked me out of the bedroom, saying my snoring and early morning alarms were disrupting the baby's sleep. I understood. But then she stopped letting me hold my own son at night, saying he was too fussy with me. Sex? Forget it. I waited months before even bringing it up, but when I did, she looked at me like I was disgusting. Meals? She stopped making them for me. She prepared just enough for her cell phone small plate. One bowl of soup. When I asked if she could make a little extra, she snapped, "You're a grown man. Cook for yourself." Fine. I adapted. I worked harder, took on more shifts, trying to provide. We had a mortgage, a baby, and my wife wanted financial security. I switched from my editorial job to more physically demanding work, pushing myself beyond my limits so we could pay off the mortgage early and afford the car she wanted. I thought I was doing the right thing, but no matter what I did, she remained distant. She wouldn't talk, wouldn't touch me, wouldn't even look at me with warmth. And then, one day, she just filed for divorce. Out of nowhere. Her reason? You were never really part of this family. That broke me. But then came the real gut punch. She wanted full custody. No shared parenting, no weekends, just supervised visits. She told the court I had been absent as a father, always working, never bonding with my son. I was furious. I worked for them, to give them everything. And yet, somehow, I had become an outsider in my own family. I fought for joint custody. I lost. The court sided with her. That's when I started noticing things that didn't add up. She claimed she was struggling financially as a single mom, but she suddenly had expensive new clothes, a personal trainer, a brand new SUV. She said she needed space from me, but she refused to move out of our home, even though I was still paying for it. And then, the biggest red flag, her son. Every time I visited, he barely spoke to me. He clung to his mother like his life depended on it. When I tried to hold him, he pulled away. And the way he looked at me, like I was a stranger. I thought maybe he was just young and confused. But then, during one visit, he said something that made my blood run cold. I was helping him with a puzzle when he suddenly looked up and whispered, "Mommy says you don't love me." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I asked him why he thought that. He just shrugged and went back to playing. That night, I started putting pieces together. My ex had been slowly turning my son against me, feeding him lies, making sure he saw me as an outsider. But why? What did she gain from erasing me? Then I found out. It started when I checked her social media, something I hadn't done in a while. Her profile was public, and while she never posted much, a friend had tagged her in a photo of her and another man, smiling, holding hands, acting like a happy couple. I felt sick. Who was he? How long had this been going on? I did some digging, and what I found shattered everything I thought I knew. This wasn't new. This wasn't after our divorce. She had been with him for years. While I was working overtime, breaking my back to provide, she was building a new life behind my back. But that wasn't even the worst part. The man in the photo, my son, looked just like him. I couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through more photos, comparing their features. The same nose, the same eyes, the same everything. It wasn't possible. I had been there when he was born. We had done the tests at the hospital. Hadn't we? A pit formed in my stomach. I had never done an actual paternity test. Why would I? I had trusted her. But now, I ordered a DNA test kit. It took everything in me to act normal during my next visit, to not let her see the suspicion in my eye. The results came back a week later. I am 0% related to the child I raised as my own. He was never mine. My whole world collapsed in that moment. She had lied to me, trapped me, used me. And when she was finally ready to move on, she erased me like I was nothing. I confronted her. She didn't even flinch. "You were a good provider. It was easier this way." That's all she said. No remorse, no guilt. I told her I would fight for revenge. I didn't care how long it took. I would take her to court for fraud, for parental alienation, for every last penny she stole from me. And her response? She laughed. "You won't win. The courts always side with the mother." And she was right. Legally, I had no rights to my son anymore. I was just nothing. So I did the only thing I could do. I stopped paying. The mortgage? In my name. The car? Mine. The bills? All mine. She had played me for a fool, but she forgot one thing: she was completely dependent on me. When the power got shut off, when the eviction notice was posted, when the repo men came for her car, she panicked. She called me, screaming, demanding to know how I could do this to my family. I told her I was never your family, and I blocked her. Now I'm rebuilding. It still hurts. I still miss my son, even though I know he was never really mine, but I refuse to let her win. Somewhere out there, karma is waiting. And when it comes for her, I hope she remembers me. Because I'll be watching.